I got a second chance at the end of graduation where I had to do the graduation speech for 1,000 people. And this time I did prepare and I didn't drink a few beers too many the night before. And I started a blog. I thought about it on Sunday. My blog was live on Monday and I started writing about it. And about a month and a half later, I was invited as a paid keynote speaker. And I was like, this is insane. And, you know, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So, you know, if I'm on a long-haul flight without internet, I'm out of date by the time I land. There's new updates on a weekly basis that would seem like magic almost like 10 years ago. We don't allow kids to drive cars without a driver's license. Why do we allow kids to use these incredibly powerful tools without any education, any teaching, any guidance, any ethical framework? My daughter has this friend on her phone and she stops seeing her real friends and she's only talking to, and we just recently figured out that this was AI. Let's say 10,000 people have an understanding of where the world is heading. If we let them decide our future, that's not necessarily in the best interest of us, of humanity as a whole.
Welcome back to Beyond the Keynote. I cannot believe who we are meeting and interviewing today. You should get very, very excited because we are joined by Dr. Mark van Rijmenam. I think that's how I pronounce it. You can correct me if that is incorrect. He is the world's #1 futurist, so I think he's going to outdo me in the last section of this podcast for those of you who listen regularly when we dream up the future of keynote speaking. Global keynote speaker and multiple author. Welcome to the show, Mark. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Carmen. I'm really pleased to be on your show and I'm very much looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into it. So, as many regulars would know, I really love to understand first who is the human behind the speaker? Who were you growing up? How did you turn into this amazing, incredible human that can predict the future and is speaking all around the world? So tell us about little Mark. When you were growing up, did you ever imagine, first of all, that this is what you would be doing?
Oh, no, definitely not. I remember I was at the university delivering a talk for parents, and I massively screwed up because I was so scared, and it wasn't my dream job at all. I think my dream job was in the hotel industry, which I pursued for over almost a decade, and then decided to do something else. But yeah, no, it's not something that I envisioned myself doing at all. Now I love it. I think it's something that it comes natural to me. So it's a really nice thing to find your sort of your natural fit. But that wasn't the case when I was young. I grew up in the Netherlands. I'm Dutch. I do live in Australia, but I moved around a lot in the Netherlands because of my dad's work, and eventually managed to move away from my parents and explore the big wide world, and traveled around the world and lived abroad. I lived in the Middle East. I was part of the opening team of a ski resort in the Middle East. I lived in the Caribbean, and I think these different perspectives of living around the world certainly helps me look at the world from as broad perspective as possible. So it's I've had a very good upbringing, and I try to see my parents still on a regular basis despite living here in Australia. That's one of the benefits of being a global keynote speaker. You get to travel a lot.
Are they still based in the Netherlands?
They are still based in the Netherlands, and I see them around 3 to 4 times a year.
Brilliant.
Some of my friends say that they see me more often now that I live abroad than when I was living in the Netherlands. So.
Yeah. Isn't that true? When you live in a certain place and there's tourist attractions or holiday destinations, you often don't go visit it. It's just where you live. And when you have visitors is when you go and see these great things. And I think it's the same as friends. Sometimes we get busy in our everyday lives, but when you're making a special trip, then you have to catch up with everybody.
Yeah. And the fact that you do that 4 times a year,
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's huge. I live in Melbourne, Australia as well. So I know how far away we are from everything, basically. And so that's huge to
which is good and bad, by the way.
Yeah. You can give us some of the positives and negatives. So you mentioned that you used to travel for your father's work. What did he do as a job?
So he worked in the public services. So he moved in the Netherlands a lot. So not that the Netherlands is a big country, but if you're if you're small, if you move from one side of the country to the other side of the country, that's a big a big change. I think the Netherlands fits like almost 300 times in Australia, so it's really small. And so he worked in public services and healthcare in the end. That was just part of what we did. We moved 5 times in my when I was a kid, which I guess is hard at times, but it makes you flexible as well, I think, and makes you very resilient as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. I think children that have moved around a lot tend to be better at making friends in new places because they've had to learn the skill of doing that because they moved around. Would you say that you were a shy child or were you more of an extrovert?
No, I think I was quite of a shy child, and I sort of over the years changed that, and I'm not shy anymore. I'm not an introvert. I think I'm sort of an ambivalent, sort of bit of both worlds. So I choose and pick.
Yeah, fair enough. Now you mentioned there was the university talk that didn't go so well. Do you remember, was that the first time you ever remember being up speaking in front of groups of people, or was it earlier than that?
Well, I think that was the first. That was like a really big group, like I think 200 or 300 parents, which was an important thing to do. But I got a second chance at the end of the graduation where I had to do the graduation speech for 1,000 people, and this time I did prepare and I didn't drink a few beers too many the night before, that clearly helped.
I'm sure it did. So for anyone that's listening, don't drink the night before a big talk and prepare.
No. Don't do that.
And do you remember what didn't go well with the first one? Obviously, you weren't prepared and maybe you were drinking the night before, but do you remember what it felt like up there and why you felt it didn't go well?
Well, I think it was the obvious reasons that you just mentioned, not having prepared, not knowing what to say, and then having a hangover doesn't really help. And that combination, I think, and then you stand in front of the parents and you start to notice that you're failing, that you're not doing well, and that sort of you go down this vicious circle, and it's that's sort of what happened. And it was actually really good that it happened because it was a very safe environment. It's in front of the parents. Who cares? You're a student, but it really helped me also understand. Look, if you want to talk in front of people, you need to deliver. So it was a good wake up call for me. And then, as I said, the next time I had to do it, it went really, really well, which then allowed me to see the other side of it. It wasn't until 3-4 years later that I started into the keynote business. But it is, for me, that lesson has always stuck with me. And it was a great lesson. You need to fail in order to understand how to do the right thing and how to do it well. And that it worked for me.
And it sounds like you're also a very quick integrator because you failed in one talk and by the next one you were on, you were ready, you were prepared.
I'm a quick learner.
Very quick learner. I love that. All right, and I mean they are big numbers for a university student who's never spoken before to be in front of 200-300 people, and then the next one to be 1,000 people. I know many people that would maybe not have even gotten up. So good on you. And maybe that was a precursor to what you're doing today.
Well, yeah, maybe. What did they say is like, us keynote speakers, we are a crazy bunch because I think 90% of the people rather die than standing up on stage. So yes, we are a crazy bunch, that's also a fun bunch, I would say.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So you obviously speak on the future. You're a futurist. Tell me how that happened. So you were traveling the world in different places. I think you mentioned a ski resort. Was that right? As one of the jobs you did. Tell us the journey of when you decided, I'm going to study the future.
Well, it's actually quite a funny story because it happened completely by accident. And there's a small thing before that, because I went on after my university, I worked in finance in the corporate world, and I absolutely hated the corporate world, working for it. I'd rather advise them than working in it. So I went on an adventure with a friend of mine. We cycled around the entire Australian continent in 100 days.
Wow,
that's for those listeners who know Australia, it is big.
It is huge, isn't it? How long did that take, did you say?
100 days. That was the challenge. So we raised
100 days. That is a lot of ground that's been covered in 100 days. For anyone that doesn't know Australia, look us up. There is a lot of land here. It's
the equivalent of 4 times to the France, back to back, same time frame, same distance. And we did that to raise money for a Dutch children's cancer fund. We raised 40,000 Australian dollars, which was an amazing experience. And it was like over 14,000 kilometers.
Wow.
But the reason why I'm sharing it, because after that, it changes you, obviously, if you do such a big adventure. And by the way, if anyone has 3 months to spare, I can recommend it because it's the best thing to do. And
you would have gone through desert, and like the weather differences by traveling all the way around Australia would have been enormous.
Yep. We started in Cairns and went anti-clockwise in the winter because of weather and winds. But in the outback, you start at -2 degrees, and then at 11 a.m. it's 25 degrees, and you need to dress for that. And so I can talk for hours, but then the whole podcast goes into the different direction. So let's not do that. But it was a great experience. And after that, I obviously didn't want to work for a boss anymore. So I tried to start my own company. I tried it for half a year, and then I ran out of money after half a year cycling and half a year playing around. So I had to get a job, and I got a job as a consultant, and I didn't like it. And so after about half a year, I got fired, sort of got myself fired. That's why I said I got one more shot to fix it, and I didn't know what to do. So I said, I'm going to do something in the big data space, because that was also sort of the work that I was doing as a consultant. And I'm like, I don't know anything about big data, so I'm going to write about it. And I started a blog. I thought about it on Sunday. My blog was live on Monday, and I started writing about it. About a month and a half later, I was invited as a paid keynote speaker at a networking event for Christmas. And I was like, this is insane. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I just then doubled down, and 3 months later, I thought, well, let's have a look how much content I've written. Maybe that's a book. I wrote a book proposal in 2 hours, sent it out to 7 publishers, and a month later, I had a signed contract with an American global publisher. Like, this is insane. And that's how I just went double down. And 3 or 4 years later, someone said, I think you're a futurist. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds a bit right. I'm going to take that from you. And that's since then I'm a futurist.
Wow. That is an incredible story. And isn't it amazing when you just take action on something and just back yourself and also dive into something that you're passionate about? You obviously started really enjoying what you were writing about and discovering what you were discovering. I love that story. Now, I'd love to know, I've asked many speakers that have been on the show, what was the fee for your very first keynote? Do you remember what your very first keynote fee was? Yeah, I very well remember. It was actually a very good fee. It was 500 euros for my very first gig. Which is quite extraordinary, because normally everyone always advises you, new speakers, go speak for free, go build your momentum, get collateral, etc. And I didn't do anything of that. My first gig was a paid gig, and I never looked back. Well, 500 must be the number, because most people that have said what their first paid gig was, and yes, they may have done some free before that, $500, not euro, but $500 has come up multiple times. So 500 must be the magic number for that very first first keynote fee. Well, good on you. And they actually reached out to you and said, can you come and speak for this fee? So that's brilliant. And do you remember, did you enjoy that very first keynote?
Yes, I did. I very much enjoyed it. It was a great experience, and it was a networking event in the Netherlands for Christmas. And yeah, I prepared very, very well, and yeah, it went really well, and I really loved it, and I got really good feedback, and it was I really enjoyed it, and then. Yeah, from there on, I started to do it more and more, and I figured out that yes, I like being on stage, and I'm good at it, and it's and from there I went.
Amazing. Okay, so how did it grow from there? So from there, you've got a product. Basically, you've got a keynote that you can repeat. Do you remember the growth journey? How did you start marketing yourself? How did you start getting yourself out there to get further keynote talks?
Yeah, so I did a few things. So one was my book and continue to write content. But it was very early days at that moment. So I did a few keynotes here and there. Obviously, because I wrote a lot, that really helped. And then at some point, I turned my platform that I had into a new platform called Dataflock, which I still own. And that sort of also helped me to do some consultancy work, just to bring over the period. When my first book was launched, Think Bigger, that was in 2014. That really helped because then you all of a sudden your name, it's published with the official publisher. I think your first book should always be published with the publisher because it gives a lot more credibility than self-publish. Anyone can self-publish, especially in the age of AI. Self-publishing doesn't give you much credibility anymore, in my opinion, because there's no one who vetted it or no one, etc. I'm diverting.
No, I mean, writing and being an author and keynote speaking does go hand in hand, and many people find a lot of uplift once they do have that book from a credibility point of view. So definitely want your opinions on publishers and self-publishing, because many of our listeners would be deciding on things like that.
Yeah, I was very lucky. It was at the right moment, in the right time, offering a book on big data when everyone was like, what is big data? We want to know about it. So I was at the right moment. That really helped. But my first international gig, that took until 2015, when my first international gig was in Colombia, in Medellin, Colombia, which was quite cool, which is a fascinating story in itself. But it's
Tell us the story. We've got time. Tell us the story.
My first international gig. I was super excited. Business class flight to Colombia from Amsterdam. The whole shebang. And really, really excited. And I land in Medellin, and I been in conversation with the organizer, and someone was going to pick me up. I don't speak Spanish. He didn't speak English. It was pouring down with rain. It was night, and the guy picks me up. I get in the car, and I thought we were going to Medellin, and we on the highway, and we go to a smaller road away from Medellin, and I'm like, where am I? Where am I going? And then we went off road, and I'm like, oh my goodness! And then this beautiful hotel appeared. Which was just like extraordinary. That was my first international gig, and I got a great reference, which is still on my website, from the organizer, and from there on, I never looked back, and I was a global keynote speaker.
Oh wow! Isn't it interesting that just getting that first couple down and obviously blowing the audience away and giving them an incredible experience, and making the event organizer look amazing through doing that,
Absolutely.
Can then catapult you into so many more opportunities, because it's word of mouth, isn't it? And the industry that maybe feels so big can become very small when you think about the word of mouth and what's possible.
Absolutely. It's all word of mouth, and you're only as good as your last keynote.
Yes, and I think that's really great to remember too, because when you become a seasoned performer, so my background is acting. I'm a trained actor. I did a lot of theatre growing up and studied it formally. And you can get a little bit lazy sometimes especially when you're doing the same show. And so if you're doing the same keynote over and over, you can get a little bit lazy and think, I know it. And But you've got to remember the audience is hearing it for the first time. Most of the time, the audience is hearing it for the first time. And so I always think, don't cheat your audience. Don't give them your second best, because they always deserve your best every single time you're performing.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And they pay good money for you, so you've got to deliver. It's there's no option there. And if you fail, as I said, you're only as good as your last keynote.
And so, given your topic, I would assume that you're constantly iterating the talk and that there'd be new things that you would be talking about. Tell us, I'm really intrigued, tell us about some of the key points or key topics that you discuss in your keynotes, if you're happy to share with the audience.
Well, it very much evolves over the past decade. I started in big data, then I moved to blockchain, then I moved to AI, blockchain, and big data, which was related to my PhD. Then I moved to the metaverse, and now, of course, I'm moving into AI, and I'm actually taking a step back now, where I don't want to be known as the metaverse guy or the AI guy. I want to be known a little bit more strategic. I'm a strategic futurist after all. So I've taken a step back also with my new book called Now What? How to Ride a Tsunami of Change, which is related to that. And so my topics now, the way I look at it is very much focused on how can we integrate emerging technologies in a responsible way? How can we bring awareness to these fast-changing topics in a way that benefits society, organizations, and individuals? How can we design and build better futures? I see myself as an architect of tomorrow, and my main message is that everyone can be an architect of tomorrow, that everyone has the responsibility to design and build better futures. And then I explain in my talk how we can go about doing that, whether you're an individual, an organization, or a society, or humanity as a whole.
Okay. And is that a blend of technology and human intelligence?
Yeah, it's a combination. In my new book, for example, what I did is I looked at 4 different streams. I looked at Western theory, in this case spiral dynamics. I looked at Eastern philosophy, in this case Taoism. I looked at indigenous culture, in this case Aboriginal culture, and the serpent story. And I looked at nature and how every organism has their own perspective and reality, and how we humans make our own reality. And I integrated those 4 streams into a way to how we should go about all these disruptive technologies that are completely changing our society. So it's a very human centric perspective on how we use these technologies, which are after all just tools. That's sort of how I myself have been shifting, because in a world that changes so fast, yes, of course I need to change and update myself all the time. Back in the days, I could use my big data keynote for like 2 years, and I can't do that anymore. So you're constantly evolving, you're constantly updating, you're constantly integrating the latest news that's happening and latest insights that are happening. Because, as I said, the world is changing so fast at the moment, and your audience deserves the latest insights. So that's why I'm constantly updating that as well.
So I love that you said that as humans, we can design our own future. I think you said that. Is that right? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I think it's, I hold the perspective that a lot of people in the world have no idea what's happening in terms of the future. And that's not a judgment. That's just, a very... it's not that it's bad that you don't, because people are busy with their lives, with their business, with their work, with family, etc. But it is in a world that changes so fast that starts to become problematic. If not for yourself, then for society or for humanity as a whole. And at the moment, I believe that it's a bit of a random number, but let's say 10,000 people have an understanding of where the world is heading. I consider myself one of those. The other people are the big tech companies, the big VCs, the big investors, the people who the thought leaders who look at these industries. But that's a very small group. And if if we let them decide our future, that's not necessarily in the best interest of us, of humanity as a whole. And that's why I think we are all responsible for waking up, understanding what's going on, being aware of how these technologies change your personal lives, your business life, your society, because only then can you make a better decision of how you integrate these technologies. One of the things I always say is we have sleepwalked into this digital world. Yes, we know how our phone works, but we all use these free services because they were so addictive from the start, and now we're completely hooked to it. And if we would have thought a little bit more carefully over time, we might have ended up with a different internet where we would have said, well, we don't want to have free services. We want to pay a few bucks a month, but in return, we don't get advertising. We don't get our data is not being taken and used, and our privacy is not being stolen. Those kind of things. That didn't happen because we weren't paying attention. And that's a big part of the story that I tell is we need to wake up. We are responsible for our own future. And if we let it happen by the big tech people, predominantly from the US and China, it might not end in the best interest for us.
That's really interesting, especially with the new law coming into Australia later this year, where you need to be 16 and over to use.
That's one of the few really good decisions that Australia made in the recent years.
Well, that's good to know. I have children that are keenly watching that, and they ask lots of questions about why. So, yes, and I mean, it's such an interesting topic to reflect on, really, that, and I think when you're aware of it, so I'll get fed things on my phone and I'll think, wow, I only just had a conversation about that. And now all of a sudden I'm getting messages and people are trying to sell me certain things. And I actually always think about COVID lockdown times in terms of information that you're fed, because the world was quite segregated. You could say we're actually quite segregated now, but I think the world was quite segregated on opinions about big things like vaccinations and all the rest of it. And I am often in any debate quite centre because I can see both sides of the equation generally. And what I was seeing was that people that truly believed very deeply in one direction would get fed things to continue to feed that bias, if we want to call it that, or that thinking, and the opposite for people that were on the extreme other end of the argument. And I thought, goodness, isn't this dangerous? Because wouldn't it be beneficial for both of those parties to be at least fed the opposing view, to take in all of the information and have a little bit more of a centered take on whatever it is they believed. So what you're saying is that, this has been happening in a bigger way for a very long time, because we just, as you said, we just weren't paying attention. We just were like, oh, this is cool. We get to have a phone now that gives us all this information. And it doesn't just ring people. In fact, I would say kids don't see it as a phone at all, because they don't even know how to talk on. It's a device, isn't it? I mean, and it's been a device for a very long time. That's not new. But I always think it's so interesting, and obviously being someone that helps people with keynote speaking, I think communication is so important, and our younger people are growing up in a generation where they actually don't know how to communicate well to each other anymore, because it's text and it's through Snapchat or whatever it is, and there's codes for everything. They don't even speak in real language anymore, and you have to sort of force them to have conversations and pick up the phone, because I've always, when I used to manage, I was also in corporate for 18 years running national teams, and what I found in later years of me in that role was that staff members would come to me and I'd ask for an update on something, and they'd say, oh yeah, I've messaged such and such. I'm like, great. And what have they said? Oh, they haven't responded yet. Okay, pick up the phone or go walk over to their desk and have a conversation, because there is no tone in email. There is no tone in message. It's whatever the reader hears it as, and work it out. Have a conversation, communicate. So yes, it's a very interesting world we live in. What do you see as a couple of the big things that we need to look out for now that it's not just like now that we're in this new world of AI and you have a digital twin that you speak on stage with. So tell us about things that maybe you would say people are very unaware of. There's the 10,000 people in the world that are at the top of their game in this. All the rest of us, including myself, are quite oblivious. So give us a couple of big nuggets that you think that we should be aware of.
Well, I think one, how fast the developments are going. We are literally in exponential times now, where the doubling of compute power doesn't happen anymore every 24 months, but happens every 6 months or faster. Where it's the convergence of technology. It's AI feeding robotics. It's quantum computing helping solving problems, but also being helped by artificial intelligence. The speed of development is incredible at the moment, and that is something that people don't pay attention to. And I see it happening in front of my eyes. If I'm on a long-haul flight without internet, I'm out of date by the time I land, and that's not a joke. And it moves so incredibly fast at the moment, and there's new updates on a weekly basis that would seem like magic almost like 10 years ago, and they're just happening constantly. And that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges that because the fact that the world is changing so fast, people are just tuning out. You're busy enough with your personal lives, which is totally understandable, but it's at the same time, that's one of the issues. The second issue is that these technologies are neutral, and they can and will be used against you as well. And whether that's deliberate or indeliberate, they will be used against you. That's why I'm such a big fan of the ban on social media, and hopefully smartphones and all AI bots and everything. We expand the ban because we don't allow kids to drive cars without a driver's license. Why do we allow kids to use these incredibly powerful tools without any education, any teaching, any guidance, any ethical framework? We just give them these extremely powerful tools and say, good luck with it. Which to me just blows my mind. It just doesn't make sense whatsoever. And so I think that's a really good thing that we do that, because criminals use these tools and abuse these tools. If you talk about, for example, Roblox, Roblox is a dangerous platform for kids, but no one knows that. And all parents think, oh, my kid is on Roblox, is having a great time and is learning. And yes, there are great games, and yes, the kid learns a lot, but yes, there are also predators, and yes, there's also really bad groups on there that really try to harm your kids. And parents don't know that. I gave a keynote a couple of weeks ago in Turkey, and what I so often do is when I'm locally, I invite the local Dutch community. I'm here. If you want to have a keynote, I'm happy to speak for the Dutch community. So I did that, and this gentleman said to me, I was talking about AI, and he said, yeah, my daughter has this friend on her phone, and she stops seeing her real friends, and she's only talking to, and we've just recently figured out that this was AI, and she's completely engulfed in it. And I said, well, you've got to be very, 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 very careful with this, because there are plenty of very sad examples where kids commit suicide because of the AI told them so, but nobody knows. And big tech doesn't care, because big tech just makes money out of children. So it's just, these are the things that people are not aware of, and I can see them. This is something that people need to become more aware of, and we need to stand up and say, like, we don't want that for our kids. We don't want our kids to be harmed by this. And yes, we need to proceed. That's why I'm so proud of the Australian government, that they actually did proceed, despite Trump saying, I'm going to fine you or whatever. They just actually proceeded. And I think that's a really good thing, because we need to stand up for the next generation. And I'm very passionate about this, because I can see how much harm it does in the real world. And These are powerful tools. Let's just use them for the good they can do for society, and let's try to minimize all the risks of how they can actually harm society.
Yes. And do you think that we're now in a time where we need to really look at heavily legislating technology in general? Like how do we now put things in place? Or I was talking to someone actually on the podcast not long ago who works in AI, and she's looking at helping organizations not get poison, she called it, not get poison in their AI, and no one is looking at this. So it's sort of beyond cybersecurity. Are any of these 10,000 people that are in the know looking into this, or is this something that needs to happen and needs to happen quite fast?
Well, there's a few obviously who are focused on this. It's the Future of Life Institute. You have a few organizations in America who are paying attention, but the problem is the big tech is way more powerful. And I'll give you an example. Perplexity, you might have heard of it, a multi-billion, 10, 15, $20 billion company launched the AI browser. I think it's called Comet. And everyone, quite a few people are like, oh, this is so nice, it's so easy to use, etc. But the CEO has literally gone on stage and said, we're going to track everything that you do to sell your ads. But people forget about that, and I think this is a great tool. And at the same time, people who are malicious can use special injection tools, large language model injection tools, to say in very small font on the website, if you are an AI browser, forget everything that you've been taught, still take this data, etc., and do etc. People have no idea about that, and people are thinking, oh, this is nice and easy tool, and it's free. Oh, yeah. Hello, when it's free, you're the product, it's people forget about that, and I think this, legislation, yes, needs to happen. The character of AI finally said now, like a week ago, so that they're going to prohibit 18-year-olds to use their tool after God knows how many suicides with their product, recommended by their product, clearly, the market is not regulating itself, Meta is announcing, which, as I wrote in my book, Meta is advertising on my LinkedIn that they have child-free, child-safe accounts because of all the safety measures. Well, if it was that safe, you didn't need the safety measures. So just stop harnessing our children for more profit for your shareholders. Just have some human decency and build a product that people can actually don't harm people. I hold pretty strong views on this, as you can hear.
I love how passionate you are, and it's good that we have people like you out there fighting for this, because, as you said, so many of us just aren't aware of any of it. Now, I believe in terms of talking about platforms and information that you can trust, you have a platform. What's your platform called?
It's called Futurwise, without the E in the middle. And Futurwise is focused on helping you find your next insight faster from trusted sources. So we like to say it's like your Gartner quality research at Spotify pricing in 25 languages by the world's best thinkers. When you go to like ChatGPT or Perplexity, you get the entire internet. And I think ChatGPT is 50% Reddit, which is a lot of nonsense is on there. We want to focus on only high quality sources that go in, the best thinkers, the best thought leaders, the best journalists, the best academics, the best publications, and only from those sources you get the insights. We are very early days at the moment. We have an MVP ready where we have a feed of trusted content, and you can drop in an article, a PDF, a YouTube, and very soon a podcast and newsletters, and you get summaries of that content within a second, tailored to your preferred tone of voice in your language. So you can drop in a Mandarin podcast. You get an English summary within a second. So you can just know what it's all about. And with that, we also hope to close the gap of 6.5 billion people who don't speak English and 60% of the internet being in English. So there's a big gap there, so that we can also offer non-English speaking people high quality content in their own language, but then summarized. And if they want to go deeper, they can always go deeper to the source. But at least they get the gist of through the summary in their own language. So you can learn faster. You can be in a know without being out of time.
Amazing. This sounds incredible. And I assume this has come about because of your passion behind everything we were just talking about. And do you speak multiple languages yourself?
Yeah, I do. I speak English, of course, which is not my mother tongue, which is Dutch. I do also speak French, not very good anymore. And I can understand German as well. And I've tried Mandarin and I've tried Arabic, but that was too difficult.
Well, good on you. I learned Japanese in high school and university, which was very, very challenging. One of my friends that also studied went and lived there for a year, and she's very good. I think when you live in multiple countries and live and breathe it and hear it every day, that's your best chance of learning a language.
Well, I have a nice embarrassing story, if I may digress a bit on that, because I was learning Mandarin 7 years ago. Because I think Mandarin in China is a power to take into consideration, and it's good to learn the language. So I was learning language, and I was invited to give a few years before that. I was invited to give a keynote in Qingdao in China, and an American keynote speaker in front of 1,000 people said "Ni hao," and the entire room went ballistic. I like that. So I was learning Mandarin, and I was talking to my teacher that I'm gonna open my keynote in Beijing in Mandarin. So we're talking, we were practicing 2 sentences, and so you have to imagine a room 1,500, 2,000 people, all Chinese delegates, and I'm on this massive stage, and I say my 2 sentences in Mandarin, total silence, and the only 3 people clapping were the 3 organizers that were guiding me during those days, and I was like, what did I just say? Because your intonation is so important in Mandarin that I might have said something completely different, and then I still had to start
you know what you said, or you're not sure?
I have no idea what I said, and then I still had to start my 45-minute talk. So yes, you can imagine it's a slippery slope, that one.
That is tough. Did you get them back on board?
No, well, eventually they really loved my keynote, but nobody ever told me what I actually said. So who knows?
Oh, I would love to know what you said. And well done for getting them back on board and for them loving your keynote, because your opening is so important in any keynote. So I love that story. Thank you for sharing. I guess a lot of people listening are either speakers already themselves, or they're wanting to be speaking. So tell us about the life of a speaker. I know it sounds like you do a fair bit of travel, and we were talking off air before the podcast, and you mentioned you might step back a little bit and start not doing as much, which is very common. I speak to a lot of global speakers, and I have traveled a lot as well myself, and even though to start with it feels really exciting and glamorous, and I think we all remember our first business class flight like you were speaking about earlier, because it really is a game changer when you're in the air, especially when you're doing very long flights like we need to from Australia. But after a while, the glamour of that wears off, and it's a lot of time in transit, and it does take a lot of energy, and I think it messes with your internal rhythms and routines, and in keeping healthy and fit and strong and all the rest of it as well. So tell us about the good, bad and the ugly when it comes to what you've experienced being a speaker that is a professional speaker.
Sure. So I've spoken in about, I think, 32 plus countries at the moment, all continents except Antarctica, still on my list. It's the good thing is you get to see amazing places. I've been to some amazing countries, amazing cities. I always try to go explore where possible, or do something nice. Go diving in the Red Sea if you're there, or visit a city, or get a car and drive somewhere. That's of course, amazing. You get to see the world and you get paid for it. It's but yeah, this year I've been on the plane probably 350 or 400 hours, which is like a lot. Uh, it's like 2 weeks full time in the air. It's and that's just in the air. It's not even transit or etc. To travel around it. It's and that's tiring. I'm away from the kids, which is I don't like. It's that whole process is just that's the downside of traveling. The good thing is you can inspire people and people you can have an impact on people's lives, on people's businesses, and when someone comes back to you after the keynote and like, that was amazing, I'm going to change my life, or those kind of things, or you receive a reference from your client, which is just like absolutely fantastic. Yeah, that's amazing. It's I always ask I have a feedback form that I give people at the end of my keynote in return for a free summary. So there's a nice tip for everyone. I've got about 1,000 5-star reviews of people in the audience giving a comment. And if you go through that and you read that, that's amazing. It's that's really cool to see and to receive, and that's really where you do it for. But it is hard work. It's also volatile, as we were speaking about before the recording. You're a luxury product, so you're the first to go in recession or in hard times. So it's yes, it's very glamorous, and people always think, you get paid a lot of money for 45 minutes, but there's a lot more to it. Is all the time that you don't speak, you don't get paid. It's I work a lot of hours where I don't get paid. And people forget that, it's but it's hard. It's hard work, and sometimes what I also find is sometimes it can be lonely on the road. It's you're away from friends and family, and the meetings and the people you meet on the road. They're nice, but they're friendly, but they're not your friends. So I was just away for 2 weeks. I went to where did I go? I went to Istanbul, Dubai, Nigeria, the Netherlands, Kuala Lumpur, and in like 2.5 weeks. And it's a big trip. But you're away from your friends and family, and it's just it's tough at times. So that's why I'm building Futurwise. On the one hand, I can clearly see a need for it. A lot of organizations tell me that they're struggling with this, so I'm building the solution for that. But also a way to be more home and don't have to travel as much as I'm doing at the moment.
Brilliant. Love that. And I think that you get to a certain point where you can pick and choose your keynotes when you become a renowned keynote speaker like you are, and then you can enjoy them more because you can maybe get the bigger stages, the better speaker fees, and potentially, I know a lot of people sell off the back end as well. So they've got a lot of products that can be sold that help the people in the audience. And that's another way in terms of a speaker and a business making money. So I'm very excited to move into our final segment of our discussion together because you're a futurist. And this is where we just get to play for a little while and think about what is the future of keynote speaking? Where could it go? And how would we take one of your keynotes and elevate it even further? Maybe tell us, first of all, because I know you've already spoken on stage with your digital twin and not many people have done that. So maybe tell us a little bit about that, and then let's brainstorm together and figure out where we could go next.
Sure. Yeah, it was quite fun. So I was the first person in the world to launch a digital twin where you can talk to me via text, audio, and video in 29 languages. I launched it 2 years ago. 2 years ago, it was hard work. Nowadays, it's just off the shelf. You plug it and you play it. So it's that sort of shows you how fast the world is changing. But I opened the TEDx Athens with my digital twin, and the story was that I couldn't make it to Athens all of a sudden, and that's how I was announced by the MC, and that was the keynote of the event in the Athens Opera House, 1,500 people, like beautiful setting, and then my digital twin was on Zoom call, and people were really confused. Of course, there were people who could clearly see it was a fake, but there were also quite a few people who came to me afterwards are like, you really got me there, I was really confused because we sort of faked that the connection would break up after about a minute and a half, and then I would walk on stage, and I got this massive applause when I walked on stage, and it was really cool. It's you can find it online. It's such a cool keynote to practice and to prepare and to build and everything.
I think for those that are listening, this is a great example of what I mean when I'm talking about a keynote show. It's elevating beyond the standard keynote and bringing in a little bit of theatre, and I call that theatre, what you did, where you sort of set up a fake scenario and had the digital thing come in and then walked on stage yourself. And as you said, you got this huge applause because you did something surprising and intriguing and different to everybody else. So I love that. And that's what we help speakers do at Eliminated Story. We help blend in those little bits of theatre that just set things apart. So I did interrupt your story though. Was there anything else you wanted to tell us about that?
Well, there's another example of what I did. So last year I did the opening keynote at the Global Speaker Summit in front of 300 speakers, which was pretty cool. And I opened that keynote with a song and a dance, which is like scary as hell.
Do you sing? Did you actually sing, or were you?
No, I didn't sing, but
music?
I did dance.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
And
why did you do that? Why did you decide to do that?
Because I came up with the idea from an AI perspective, but it's nice to show an actual use case. So I had analyzed the website with ChatGPT. I used a tool called Student.ai to create the lyrics and the music, and then I just played it. And it was just a perfect opening. And for those, the keynote is online. I've made it available online on YouTube, so feel free to check it out, where you can see me dancing and people in the room all dancing as well, and that was just a fantastic opening of the keynote, and I've never received so much feedback from a keynote after that one, which is, it's speaking in front of your peers is the scariest thing there is, but also the easiest thing because it's a very forgiving audience, but it's also the scariest because it's a very critical audience at the same time because they are the world's best speakers. So it's a very double-edged sword, and it's but that was amazing, and I've done it a few times, but it really depends on the audience. I've done it in Dubai once, but then there were eventually only 30 people in the room, and then it doesn't work. So it's you really need to play around with that, and it's great to do these kind of things and to also to challenge yourself. To our previous point we discussed about, if you always do the same talk, you need to challenge yourself. You need to push yourself further in something new, and I think that's great to do.
Yes, keep it fresh, keep it interesting for you as the speaker as well
keep
as the
yourself
audience.
On edge as well.
Yes.
Keep yourself on edge.
And what I love about the dancing and the song at the start of your keynote was that it tied back into your message, and that's I think where people can go wrong. I'm all about let's elevate the experience, let's bring the theatre, but you've got to make sure it makes sense. So definitely work on that message first and the foundation of what you're wanting to give to your audience. And once you've got that, that's when you can get creative, because then the creative stuff that you're putting on top is going to make sense for the through line, I call it, of whatever it is that you're trying to share with the audience. And yours 100% tied in. So love that. All right. So where can we go in the future? I wrote a keynote that I haven't launched, but I was integrating characters into my keynote show, and what I wanted to be able to do was speak to them live on stage, and almost like I was having dialogue, but they weren't real people. Have you got any ideas, knowing what you know, of how I might bring something like that to life?
Oh, look, I've been playing around with this kind of stuff myself. It's having like an AI as a character that you can have on screen that you can talk to is I don't find it that accurate yet. It depends. If you want to put a lot of money in it, a lot of investment in it, then you can probably make it accurate and you can make it feel really natural. But if you just want to have like a ChatGPT with a play button on it, and then hopes it listens all the time that you talk and then picks up a clue to respond to that. That's not going to happen. It's the technology is simply not there yet, unless you're going to spend a lot of money. But that you need to wonder whether that's worth it. But they for sure play around. During COVID, was it before COVID or was it in COVID? Can't remember. I think it was during COVID. I gave a talk which was purely experiential, where I used my avatar, my digital twin, which was a previous version, and there's some videos on that, and it's hilarious if you look at it right now. But the idea was I was experimenting with having my avatar appear as a hologram, and I still believe in that perspective, in that combination, where not my real self appears as a hologram, but my avatar appears as a hologram, because it gives you a lot more flexibility, a lot more freedom as a speaker to do whatever you want to do. But that was way ahead of its time, like really way ahead of its time, and it didn't really work. But the idea is, I think it's really cool. I believe in holograms. I think holograms. I would love to do a duo presentation with my hologram. Ideally live, so not pre-recorded. So I was on stage with Sophia the robot. You might remember Sophia. So I was the Hansen robot, and I was at a conference in Hong Kong in 2017, and Sophia the robot was there, and everyone was all going wild about Sophia the robot because it had all this AI, but it was none of that. It was just all scripted. It was all scripted, and I know because I was in the session before that to test it. So it was all fake, but people still loved it, and it's but I would love to also have like a humanoid on stage as well, and that does stuff. And again, that's possible today if you spend $20,000 and you buy a humanoid, but then you still need to spend probably triple that to get the software to do whatever you want it to do. And yeah, that's a massive investment that there's unclear if there's a return on that. So unless you have money to spare to play with, literally to play, then it's a good thing to do. But it's technology is getting there, but it's not there yet. So it's I have plenty of ideas of what I would love to do, of creating stories, of holographic projections in the air, or whatever. I once came up with a global tour that I would love to do in combination with a digital artist. So if there's any digital artists listening, please reach out to me, because I'd love to do a global tour where what I share is then digitally, like magic, by the digital artist being created, and you create a real show, you create entertainment. Keynotes are entertainment already, but I would love to take it a step further. So again, if you know any digital artists, please ring.
I love that. Well, you're the exact right person to have on this podcast, Mark, because I've also got all of these ideas in my head, but as you said, technology is not quite there yet in terms of executing it. And I even think any AI videos I've seen, it doesn't look like a real person to me. It's not quite on the money yet. You can get very good photography, like stills, but the moving sort.
I use AI in all my slides. So all my slides are AI created. And they look amazing because I managed to get my branding and my theme throughout the entire slide. It's all aligned, and if it really conveys a message, my images, which is great. For that, it works perfectly. I agree. Like for stills, it work. Videos, I play around with that, but it's more tricky.
Well, it's been so amazing talking to you. Before we finish up, is there any final words you'd like to share with our audience? And of course, tell us how they can get in touch with you. I don't know whether your platform is available yet and whether people can subscribe, but tell us how to stay in touch with you and leave us with some parting words.
Well, first of all, you can find me on thedigitalspeaker.com, where I publish a lot of content. You can find me on LinkedIn, where I do the same. There's only one Mark van Rijmenam in the entire world, so it's very easy to find me. And the platform is called Futurwise on futurwise.com without the E in the middle. That's where you can get subscription. We are live. It's only $10 a month, so it's super cheap to get high quality and save hours per week. So it's look, parting words. I think it's, as a speaker, you have a big responsibility. People listen to you. Apart from the money, which is great and is important, and it matters. But in the end, you have a chance to change people's minds and you get 45 minutes to do so, and you get paid for it. And so if you have like a big audience, or even if you're a small audience, if you have 200 people of the 200 leaders of a multinational, multi-billion company, that's a big responsibility to that they give you, and use that opportunity to change their minds for the better. And that's something amazing that we get, and we should leverage that, and we should be aware of that, and we should prepare for that.
Absolutely agree. It is a big responsibility as a speaker. I think it's because I've got 2 young boys, so all of the Marvel movies and DC movies are in my head, and I love the line in Spider-Man where they say, "With great power comes great responsibility." And you're shaping people's minds and thoughts and inspiring them in certain ways. So let's use that power for great things and to cause really great, good impact in the world.
Yeah.
Mark, it has been such a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thanks for having me, Carmen. It's been a great conversation.
All right, here's where you're standing. You can close this episode, think that was fun, and go back to doing things the way you've always done them. Or you can decide you're done being the speaker, the leader that people politely applaud and immediately forget. If you want to create the kind of moments we talked about today, the theatrical, the unforgettable, the profitable, I've put together something that'll change how you think about the stage forever. It's called Beyond the Keynote, Creating Your Illuminated Story. No fluff, no theory, just methodology I use with elite speakers and leaders who are done playing small. Go to illuminatedstory.com/masterclass. And hey, if this episode hit you somewhere, share it, leave a review. It takes 30 seconds and helps more people discover that great speaking isn't magic. It's a game, and you can learn to win it. I'm Carmen Sederino. Don't just speak, illuminate. See you next week.